People always ask me, how much do you really need to retire before 60 in the UK? And honestly, it's a brilliant question. After working as a financial planner for nearly 2 decades and helping hundreds of people actually retire early, I can tell you the answer isn't what most people think. Just last week, a client nearly wasted 5 extra years of his life working towards the wrong number. He thought he needed £1 million. He actually needed half that. So in this video, I'm going to break down 5 things. Number 1, the exact framework to calculate your personal retirement number. 2, why having cash will destroy your retirement and what to do instead. 3, the inflation factor that changes everything. 4, how to protect yourself from a market crash the day after you retire. And 5, the simple strategy to make sure you never run out of money. Hi, I'm Gareth Shears. I'm a chartered financial planner here in the UK. And for over 18 years, I've been helping people retire earlier, smarter, and with more confidence. Now let's get into it. The biggest mistake people make when planning early retirement is guessing how much they'll actually spend. Not estimating, guessing. And I see this every single week. Just last Tuesday, a client sat in my office convinced he needed £1 million to retire at 55. He'd read it somewhere online, done some back-of-the-envelope maths, and decided that was his exact number. Now, we spent 2 hours going through his actual spending, mortgage, bills, holidays, the lot. And it actually turned out he only needed about £500,000. Half what he actually thought. Now, he nearly worked an extra 5 years for absolutely nothing. And here's the thing. Your lifestyle cost is the single most important number in your entire retirement plan. Not some figure you've plucked from a headline or what your mate down the pub has told you you need. Your actual spending. The money that leaves your account every single month to maintain the life you want to live in retirement. Now, this client didn't spend much. No fancy cars, modest holidays, mortgage had already been paid off. He actually needed less because he spent less. It's that simple. But most people work backwards. They look at the pension pot and then try to make their retirement fit that number. Now, that's completely the wrong way around. Your spending determines how much you need, not the other way around. So before you do anything else, before you stress about investment returns or pension allowances, sit down and work out what you actually spend. Not what you think you spend, what you actually spend. Go through your bank statements for at least the last 6 months. Add up everything, the mortgage, Netflix subscriptions, the coffee, the holidays, the nights out, the takeaways. Then ask yourself, what changes when you retire? No more commute, so that's fuel, and train tickets gone. Maybe you downsize, so the mortgage drops, or maybe you paid your mortgage off. But perhaps you travel more, so holidays actually go up. Now, this is your lifestyle cost. It's the foundation for everything else. Because once you know that number, you can work out how much you actually need to retire. And you might be surprised at how achievable it really is. But knowing your lifestyle cost is actually only half the battle. The next part is even more important. And it's where most people get it catastrophically wrong. Let's say you worked out you need £500,000 to retire early. Brilliant. You're ahead of 90% of people just by knowing what your actual number is. But here's the problem. You've got that £500,000 sitting in cash, or maybe in the wrong type of investment. Maybe it's a lifestyle fund in your workplace scheme. Then you're potentially in some serious trouble. Not next year, not in 5 years, but inflation is slowly eating away at every single day. Right now, with inflation running at 4 to 5%, your £500,000 lose about £20,000 of purchasing power every single year. In a decade, that's half your pot gone in real terms. And you haven't actually spent a penny. Your money isn't growing, but your living costs actually are. That gap gets wider every single year, and eventually you could run out of money. I had a client who retired at 58 with everything in premium bonds. Felt safe, felt secure, thought she was being sensible. 10 years later, she genuinely worried about running out of money because her spending had gone up 30%. Just for normal cost of living, but a savings pot hadn't. Here's what you need to do instead. You need to diversify your money so it's working harder for you while still giving you protection when the markets have a bad year. The rule I use with clients is pretty simple. Keep 12 to 24 months of annual spending in cash. That's your buffer, your safety net when the market drops or something unexpected happens. The rest goes into diversified portfolios. Equity, maybe some bonds, maybe some property depending on your situation. This way, your money is growing alongside or hopefully faster than inflation. but you're not panicking every time the FTSE wobbles or the S&P responds to what Donald Trump says, because you've got cash to cover your spending. Now, it's not sexy, it's not exciting, but it works. Your money needs to be in the right places for your plan to actually hold up and stand the test of time. Because having £500,000 means nothing if it's all in the wrong place. Diversify your money is critical, but the next factor could completely derail your retirement if you don't account for it properly. And most people don't. I'm talking about inflation. Now, I know you've heard about inflation 1,000 times, but let me show you why it actually matters for your retirement in a way most people never think about it. Now, 20 years ago, a dozen eggs would probably cost you about 80p. Today, they're closer to £3. That's nearly 4 times more expensive for the exact same thing. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The same thing is going to happen in your retirement. If you're budgeting £4,000 a month to live on right now, in 20 years' time, maybe you'll need closer to £8,000 a month to maintain the exact lifestyle. Same house, same holidays, same weekly shop, but double the cost. I had a client who'd done a brilliant job planning his retirement at 55. He'd worked at his spending, sorted his investments, everything looked spot on and perfect. But he'd forgotten to factor in inflation over the next 30 years. By the time he hit 70, his budget was completely blown. He was spending far more than he'd planned. His pot was shrinking faster than he'd expected. So when he came to us, we had to restructure everything. This is why knowing your lifestyle costs and diversifying your money isn't enough on its own. You have to build inflation into your spending projections from day one. When we build a financial plan, we don't just ask you what you spend now. We model what you'll spend in 10, 20, 30 years' time. And that really does change everything. Because if you're planning to retire at 55 and live to 85, 90 years of age, that's 30 to 35 years of inflation eating into your pot. Your £500,000 today needs to work a lot harder than you think. So when you're making your plan, whether you're doing it yourself or working with someone like me, inflation has to be factored in. Build it into your spending, build it into your returns, build it into all of your thinking when it comes to retirement. Because if you don't, you run out of money long before you run out of life. So you've got the numbers right. You've factored in inflation. Your money's properly diversified. But here's the nightmare scenario nobody wants to think about. What happens if we have another 2008 style crash the day you retire and your investments drop 30% overnight? How do you protect yourself from that? This is what I call sequencing risk. It's one of the most dangerous things that can happen in early retirement. Let me explain how that works. Imagine you've got your retirement pot all ready to go. Each year you take some money out to live on and the rest stays invested. Some years the market goes up, some years the market goes down. Now that's normal. But sequencing risk is when the market crashes hard in the early years of your retirement while you're still taking money out. And here's why that's so damaging. If your pot is falling in value and you're withdrawing money at the same time, you're shrinking it at an absolute worst possible time. Then when the market eventually recovers, and it always does, your pot has far less money left to bounce back with. So it may never actually fully recover. Now, I've read about this destroying retirements. Some retirees at 55 with 600,000, the market drops 25% in 1 year, and they keep taking £30,000 a year to live on, and suddenly they're in a real trouble in their early 60s. So how do you avoid this? So here's one option. You could use 3 pots. So pot 1 is your accessible cash, 12 to 24 months of spending. This is what you live off while the markets recover. Then pot 2, low risk investment like maybe bonds or defensive funds. This is your medium-term buffer, steady, reliable, not going to tank overnight, but there's no guarantee on that not happening if we know how the bond markets worked. But it's an option. Then pot 3, your longer-term growth pot. Invest in equities for the next 10, 20, 30-year horizon. And that's used to top up the other pots. When you structure your money in this way, you're a little bit more protected. If the market crashes the day you retire, you don't panic because you've got pots 1 and 2 to live off while pot 3 actually recovers. You're not forced to sell investments at the worst time possible. You're not gambling your entire retirement on trying to time the market, which is impossible. Now, this is how, in my eyes, you mitigate sequencing risk. And it's absolutely essential if you're retiring before 60. So we've covered a lot of theory here. Lifestyle cost, diversification, inflation, sequencing risk. But how does this actually impact you, and how much you really need to retire early? Well, you need to know your magic number. And that's what I call the amount you actually need to retire without the fear of running out of money. And as you can see from everything we've just talked about, it depends on a whole range of factors that have to be worked out on a case-by-case basis. Your spending, your investments, your timeline, your risk tolerance, it all matters. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. But here's what I can tell you. If you want to retire before 60, you need a plan, not a guess. You need to know the numbers, protect yourself from the risks we've talked about, build a strategy that actually holds together over 30 or 40 years. That's exactly what we do. If you want our help to write your own personal financial plan, tailored to your situation, book a call. The first link in the description will allow that. But if you're watching on TV, which many of you are, pause it now and scan the QR code and click through to book a call. Don't leave it too late. The earlier you start planning, the more options you have, and the less you'll need to worry about running out of money in retirement. Now, but just watching this video, you're already ahead of most people by having some foresight around making a plan for the future. But the difference between retiring comfortably and running out of money often comes down to planning. So if you want to know how much you really need to retire at 55 in the UK, watch this video now, and I'll see you over there.